right?
Yeah,
And
you're right.
Jenn is a fitness and nutrition coach, a Chief Warrant Officer Two in the U.S. Army, a champion collegiate rower, a bodybuilder, competitor, and mom and wife. Jenn, how are you doing today?
I am doing amazingly. How are you?
I'm doing so great. Thank you for getting me out, getting me on the podcast today. I felt good that you reached out, and I really wanted your message. You're the first person to really come on in the fit category, fitness,
Awesome.
helping. So it's so exciting, and I'm excited. So I'm doing well today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I, was looking through your social media and I was listening to your podcast and it just seriously sang to my soul. I just feel like what you're doing is so inspiring. I just am ecstatic to be here and speaking with you tonight. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. So, Jen, can you tell us a little bit about your sober origin story? I know your sober day. Your sober day is a special day for me. It's my mother's birthday, January 6th.
Yeah.
So that's such a beautiful day. Tell us about what brought you to that. I know you was dealing with alcohol misuse for about 15 years. So
Yes.
before we get into your background, I want to just really get right into your recovery journey and sober origin story.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started really heavily drinking in college. Alcohol was used in my family for every sort of celebration, sorrow, coping mechanism, gathering. It just was always around. I wish I could say that, I got the partying out of my system after I graduated college, but it just didn't happen that way. It got worse and worse. And then I chose a profession that the drinking culture is very normal. I also very easily subscribe to the mommy wine culture. Um, Straight out of becoming a new mom. I watched people very close with me struggle with substance abuse issues, which unfortunately ended in losing their life. Like it just was so embedded into my family history. My grandfather was an alcoholic. I never met him, but I know that that I don't want to say that I have that like alcoholic gene because there's no such thing, but I have that susceptibility to fall into addictive behaviors. And I always thought that I was above it all and I was better than it because I've always been an athlete. I've always been very fit. I've always been into nutrition and health, but it was almost like I was living this double life of like, look at all these cool, fit, athletic things I do during the day. And then happy hour would hit and I would be blackout drunk almost every night. And
Right.
so it got to a point where like there was such a mental dissonance like in the space between our ears, which is the scariest place.
Right.
Um, Sometimes it was just like my soul and my being was going in one direction and my actions and my behavior and my addiction was going in a completely different direction. It really was almost a runaway train. And I just, I for a, a good decade, but more like 15 years, would continually try to talk myself off the ledge by myself. Like I didn't reach out, I didn't ask for help, I didn't, I would give myself like, okay, you're going to have this rule around drinking and you're going to do this when you go out and you're going to not drink for this time and you're going to do these competitions and you're going to stay sober. And like every single time I hit that goal, I went right back to drinking. And it wasn't just a drink or two, it was like to get blackout drunk.
Mhm.
And it got to a point where, my kids are getting a little bit older. And there was just this very like intense moment where I sat in the shower on a Monday morning, and I was like, the last thing my kids remember me about last night was the smell of alcohol on my breath as I kissed them goodnight. And I was like, I'd always heard the voice, like, in my being, in my soul. I'm very much like, the universe speaks to us, generations past speak to us in their own way, and I kept ignoring that voice, like, you need to stop, you need to keep moving forward and not look back. But that morning, I was just like, this is it. Like, if I don't take massive action and do something really scary, this is going to be my daughter in 20 years sitting in the shower hungover on a Monday,
Right.
asking herself if she has a problem and how she's ever going to dig herself out of this hole.
That's amazing, and you're right. Alcohol is so engraved in our it's a social lubricant, and it's in everything. And
Yes.
thing is, most of us always say we're not born with the memo that we are allergic to alcohol, right?
Right.
So for me, I was the same way. I would drink to have a good time, but it was like always this attachment to it, like I needed to get blackout drunk, or I needed to go to the absolute extreme.
Mm-hmm.
And even times where I was trying to just unwind and be social, it would be so rapid that I'll get there so fast. And it's
Mm-hmm.
this thing that, no one really talks to us about, like, what's the warning signs if you are allergic, if you're different from everyone else in the population who could have a normal drink and just say, well, I'm glad. I used to see people have a glass of wine and say, oh, I'm good. And I'm like, you good?
You're good.
Keep
Finish the
drinking.
bottle.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a real brain, it's a brain issue, it's a genetic thing, it's a life thing for most individuals. It's real that in our brains, right? You and I, and then the other millions of people who suffer from the allergy of alcohol, it's just something that turns on and never turns off once we start. So that's where we have to cut ourselves a break. But like I said, unless we know this, I think if you knew this as a younger person going into life before you drank, if someone said, hey, Jen, you're most likely allergic to alcohol. So if you drink and you don't stop, maybe you shouldn't drink. It's similar to someone who may be allergic to peanuts, right?
Right.
It would have been a
Absolutely.
whole different approach, right? So we didn't get the memo, but I commend you for doing what you did, especially for the kids.
Yeah.
And how are you doing now? Because the first year is really sensitive, and I'm really concerned. And I just want to know. I want to do a check-in with you.
Yes.
How has it been for the first year?
Oh my God, I love this question. So I am pretty early in my recovery. I am learning so much about myself in terms of the multitude of feelings that I haven't felt for a good 15 years. And
Right.
I would love to say that it's all good feelings, but it's not. Like, I've been suppressing shitty feelings that I haven't really dealt with in a long time. So I would say that this, this year has been, I like to describe it as like life in HD. Like, nothing is watered down. And that's how it was when I was drinking. It's similar to like when you have that last sip of iced coffee, like you knew there was coffee in it at one time, but it's like so watered down. And
Right.
that's
Right.
really how my life went. I would numb feelings that I didn't want to feel, and in doing that, I was numbing all the feelings. So that's what I've noticed the most this year. So, and just for context, when I decided to get sober, I chose the therapy route.
Beautiful.
Not that I'm opposed to AA or other types of meetings or group meetings. I chose to get sober 2.5 months before a worldwide pandemic broke out.
Wow.
So I didn't even, I know that Zoom is such an amazing platform to have group meetings. I didn't go that route, but I did choose therapy, and I had been seeing a therapist for several years, and it took about 2 years for me to open up to my therapist and tell her, like, hey, I'm struggling with this thing and I think it's a real problem.
Right,
So
right. And that's important, first of all, because I I think the therapy part for me was part of the success I'm having now.
Mhm.
Because if I feel like if I just did AA, again, no knock to AA was one of the components that helped save me. But way
Yeah.
before I even got to AA, I was doing therapy in group because I was an inpatient, right? So I
Right.
always talk to people about the importance of therapy. And so I'm glad you took that route. So you can continue. I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah. So, and, therapy really gave me the tools that I need to, because now that I'm feeling feelings, how to deal with them. Like,
Right.
I, I lost my father in 2014. And we were very close. He was my superhero. He was struggling with a silent addiction for, you know, over a decade. And when I lost him, you would think that that would be the time where like I cleaned my life up, but it went in the opposite direction and I started drinking even more. And it makes sense though, because that's the only way I knew how to cope with anything stressful, with anything traumatic. I've been in the military for 14 years. So while, the military does a good job of trying to educate service members on addiction, they don't always do a good job of individually listening to different stories. So we usually just kind of commiserate together around a bottle, right?
Right.
So
Right.
just dealing with stress and trauma and grief all over again this year has been very real and very, I don't know, very eye opening for me. Like it,
Yes, yes. So you said, all right. So, well, first and foremost, rest in peace to dad and our condolences because
thank
that's
you.
real. My dad was my best friend, and he passed away when I was 13,
I'm
and
sorry.
that was just like that was crazy. He was my hero, so I get it. It's
Yeah.
hard for someone who hasn't been there to say they understand. So I'm with you there. You said recent deaths. Is that COVID related? Anything like that? You said like, is it anything that's happening now?
So for the no, nothing
Okay,
happening now,
okay.
but you mean in terms of the military
Yeah,
or
yeah, because I remember you said like, of the energy around the environment now. I thought you were saying that in addition to your dad, someone else may have had. Because I mean, we're losing people left to right with
I
the
know,
yeah.
it's so true. No, not anything COVID related, just, combat related. And then my
Okay, that's
dad
tough though.
is,
That's important to speak
yeah,
about, right? The PTSD related to the combat, the trauma, the
exactly.
environment, and that's always tied to the archetype of the veteran who comes home and he's having a hard time and he hits the bottle and he's dealing with the PTSD and he's like separated from society. And some people just don't really pay enough attention there, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And that's important.
Absolutely.
And with the Sober is Dope podcast, we love to talk about trauma, how it relates to our neuroplasticity, our behavior patterns, our coping mechanisms, our mental health, right?
Hmm.
And we give mad props to all the soldiers because without the soldiers, we wouldn't have been able to diagnose that form of trauma through PTSD that most of us go through naturally, right?
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
so real. So can you talk to us a little bit about that? Has PTSD affected you, maybe vicariously, directly, and how did that play into your addiction?
Okay. This again, you asked really good questions. So I married a service member. He no longer serves, but has 7 combat tours. So he saw a lot of shit and saw a lot of things go down. So, has PTSD and deals with it on a daily basis because it's not one of those things that like, okay, time heals all wounds. Like PTSD is almost gets worse as time goes on if you don't do anything about it.
Right,
So I don't have combat related PTSD, but I am surrounded by people that I love very much who have it.
right,
But I will say that, you know, I'll take you back to 2014 when I lost my father. I found him. So we tried, and I would like to, respect him in his peaceful place now, but like he was dealing with demons,
Okay.
and he was staying with us, and I walked into the guest room and he wasn't breathing. And so, my husband and I tried to revive him, and it was too late. And I would say the hardest part of that whole process, that whole event, was trying to give CPR to someone who's already passed is a terrifying visual.
Right.
Like it was just so terrifying and so sad, and I deal with that every day. And the only way that I dealt with it up until this year was to get blackout drunk.
Right. Right.
So,
And that's so tough and it's this what I learned through that process is that the good thing now, and I just want you to notice in your recovery, is that you're processing the emotions in a healthier way. Because when you just drink and black out, you do know it, the emotions stay there and they become compounded. And there's a new concept out with the doctor, I forget his name, but it's the body keeps the score. So when you have unprocessed emotions that get trapped in the body, it creates so many problems. So I know it's tough, but by dealing with it and sitting with it, sometimes that means just sitting with the uncomfortable feelings, the uncertainty, the sadness, and breathing, and eventually you will become this new person because you went through the actual process. So I'm with you. I know it's hard, and I'm telling you, my dad was there, right in front of me, my hero. 14. It was the worst day of my. And I don't mean to bring this always back to me. I'm sharing this so I could relate to you.
absolutely.
I remember, like, I was on the phone with my girlfriend. She was breaking up with me because she was going to another school. I was only 13, and then I heard my mother scream, and then we ran into the living room, and it was all happening. My dad was having a heart attack, and then the ambulance came. So I had to go through the whole process of seeing them trying to resuscitate him, shock him, and all of that. Why he already, and it was just he was there. But the thing about it was, when I was over my dad and I was pounding on his chest saying, Dad, please don't die. He he grabbed my hand for a split second and say, no, don't do that. Don't, I'm good. Like, you good. My dad was a tough guy. So he
Yeah.
had enough love before everything just to give me that last solace. I didn't understand it till later because I was young, but he was just saying, like, don't worry. And then, long story short, at his funeral, my dad had a gigantic smile on his face, which brought us all of this peace, right? So there's a spiritual side to it where we let go, and then we find this beautiful transcending peace on the other side, right? So that's what we have to believe in through faith and everything like that. So I believe my dad's in another place, and that was like his parting gift to us,
Yeah.
to say that I love you kids. I know you young. I know this sucks, but I'm okay, right? So I hope that brings you some peace, because my prayers go out to you with dad and stuff like that.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Like, I got goosebumps as you were telling me, because, you know, people's fathers and mothers, they pass away, and it's just the natural progression of life. But it was so abrupt, and this beautiful person left me way too soon. And for you to share that and know what I'm going through, and how you were young when he passed away, so I'm sure you didn't start drinking until a little bit later, but you understand, like, he was gone, and I dealt with it in like the worst possible way, so thank
I
you so
know,
much
I
for
know.
sharing.
No, no problem. And yeah, so now that brings me to the power of bereavement counseling. So one of the things that helped me, and I'm glad I'm getting to you now in your 1 year, because one of the things that helped me was I had to go through extensive bereavement counseling as a grown man, part of my recovery process. So I had
Hmm.
to sit with a specialized bereavement counselor, talk about my dad, and really go through it. So I'm not sure if you're doing bereavement counseling, but that's something to also look into. And I think a lot of people don't deal with the loss and grief properly. So it creates problems. And lastly, just another nugget is that when we lose someone, that's a form of trauma, and that changes the brain. And
Sure.
that
I
could
believe it.
create, yeah, and that creates a specific mental health component. It creates depression, anxiety, bipolar mania, anything. It runs the gamut. So
Hmm.
my thing is, right now is a crucial time. So on a lighter note, you have your sobriety, your
Yes.
hair, and you're coping, and your I would like to say your first year, you're kind of like in the honeymoon phase, right? Sobriety's fun, everything seems exciting, and it has its challenges. And then we go
Yes.
through that stage of the wall where things get a little bit more difficult. You start healing, but you're doing all of the healing while you just get while you're focusing on your fitness and your health and your career. So that's a lot. My first year, I couldn't do anything but eat donuts and drink coffee, right?
Yeah.
So, so talk to me. I want to talk to you about how fitness helped you on the recovery journey while you're healing. Can we talk about that?
Yes. Oh, so I've always been into fitness, like I said, and I think fitness actually was one of the proponents that helped make my decision, even though it was terrifying. Like I said, drinking is just part of my life and my family and my culture and everything else. But it was the fitness that was like, I would run, you know, 13.1 miles in the morning and then would be blackout drunk by nighttime. And
Yeah.
so I would wake up the next day and I was functioning, right? I could still work out, I could still go to work, I could still parent, um, questionably, but I could still do it.
Right.
So when I decided like alcohol is no longer serving me, I'm going down a very bumpy road if I continue this lifestyle. I thought I would feel better right away, and I felt like complete shit. Like
Right.
I'd wake up with night sweats.
Correct.
I my sleep was so messed up. Like I just felt like I lost a best friend. Like I didn't feel good in the morning, but my workout routine was something that I was like a hard must. Like Jen, you have to get up, like you have to continue to do the running, you have to continue to do the lifting. Like
Wow.
it just was like almost like the make your bed effect, like you get
Yes,
up and
yes,
you make your
correct.
bed.
Right.
Like my thing was like, I don't care how shitty I feel, I don't care if I want to jump into a pool of champagne and just drink the whole thing. Like I have to still get up and do my workouts. And the other thing I will say is that when you're armed with knowledge, it's there for you to use. And I physiologically and wellness wise and scientifically, I know what the effects of alcohol are on the body. I know what the effects are on your workouts. I know what the effects are on your hydration,
Right.
on your skin tone. I chose to ignore it for a really, really long time. But in my, non-negotiable of waking up and making my bed and working out, I also would remind myself of the knowledge that I had armed myself with, but refused to use for years and years and years.
Yeah.
So,
Yes. One of my favorite books is All Movement Matters by Katie Bowman. I don't know if you ever heard of Katie Bowman. She's awesome. She's a movement coach, and she has this book where she talks about, and most popular book is Move Your DNA. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but so what I learned, and this helps me because we have a segment on the podcast called the Walk in the Park with POP Buchanan, where I
okay.
actually walk. And
Yes.
the thing about walking, when you move and you're moving, it helps your DNA, it helps your epigenetics and everything, right? It just moving alone, it does so much. And so that's part of my therapy too, taking long walks. We know the brain really likes space, and this is a
Hmm.
mental health thing. and a physical thing, but the brain likes space and nature. So going out in the park, in the forest, hiking and stuff like that. So I incorporate that. And so if I ever go off track, that's how I get back on track. I say, I got to go for a walk,
I
sit in
love
the
that.
sun, get the vitamin D, do my
Yeah.
pull-ups, do my running and stuff like that. So I love that so much. So now you're amongst many things, you're doing fitness and nutritional coaching, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
how did you decide to get into that?
Because I was, like I said, always interested in health and wellness. But I will say that, and it is so great that you said you get out and you know move around, and the brain likes that. Every every hard place I found myself in life, I used fitness to um help move myself past it. Unfortunately, I had 50-pound weights around my legs because I was drinking.
Yeah. Oh,
But
that's
I
right.
think had I not had that fitness in me, it would have been I would have been gone a long time ago. Whether it be because I took my own life or because alcohol took it. Like, I have no doubt of that. So, I would find running events when I was in Iraq. I ran a half marathon while I was serving over there with a bunch of service members. I ran a marathon after I had a baby.
Wow,
I
that's
just,
incredible.
yeah, and I feel like if it helped me so much, I have to assume that there are other people that this could help, right? Like, I don't believe in fact, the word die is in diet. Like, I don't believe in like fad diets. I don't believe in pills, potions, any of that. I don't believe that we're meant to be on this earth to like count calories and dollars until we die. Like,
Right.
I, you know, I don't I don't promote any of that, but what I do promote is building those habits that serve you.
Yeah.
And one of those habits is what you put into your body. What do you put into your mind? What do you put into your soul? And like, that's another reason that I just knew that after so many years I was being a damn hypocrite. I was like, look at all these healthy things I'm doing and then undoing them every time I drank. And I would find any occasion to drink. I would say, look, there are organic grapes and organic wine. It's healthy. I
Yeah,
can
right,
drink the
right.
whole bottle, you know? I run the half marathons, and who cares if the beer truck is at the finish line? It's healthy, it's running, and it's not. And
Not.
now
And
that
it's
I
not
have
your
that
fault.
clarity.
Yeah, and it's not your fault because special interest, like the wine studies, the studies that said resveratrol was healthy, the component in the wine, that was funded by wine companies. And the
Yep,
same thing happens with cigarette companies, and the same thing happens with sugar companies.
yep,
They hire their own erroneous scientists, and they
yep.
publish these expensive have scientific articles that sway the opinion in their favor through special interest. So when
Mhm.
someone tells me there's health benefits in wine, the first thing I say to them is that there's health benefits in the grapes, but those health benefits are canceled through the alcohol within the wine. So it
Correct.
cancels itself out. There's no
Yes,
health benefits. The only thing you're experiencing is a perceived placebo
right.
in the wine is, but
Yes.
no health benefits, and I don't buy it. And what now again, now that once we once we have that knowledge, we're able to make better decisions, right? So
Yeah.
I used to do say that a lot. Oh, I'm talking about I drank so much wine thinking it was healthy, my teeth was
Yeah.
red. My teeth was purple and red.
Right.
It
Yeah.
was terrible. So my thing is, ladies and gentlemen, we're putting a disclaimer out there. There is no health benefits to, and not even in moderation. They like to say about blood
No.
pressure and stuff in
Nope.
moderation. First of all, alcohol is a depressant. It attacks your nervous system. It creates a mental health component. It makes you sad. It dehydrates you. That's just a few things. There's nothing good there. So yeah, so I'm like you too. I was always into health and nutrition, and recently I come across this amazing doctor. I don't know if you ever heard of him, Dr. Micheal Gregor, and he has an amazing, oh, you're gonna love this. He is the world's most formative scientists when it comes to plant-based diets, right?
Okay.
And this guy sits there and he does all the science. He doesn't take any money. He donates everything to his to charity. And his grandmother was diagnosed with a terminal illness, and she had one Hail Mary, and she went to this doctor who put her on a plant-based diet, and it
Hmm.
reversed her health. And then he grew up to be a doctor, and now he put out a book called How Not to Die and How Not to Diet, where he talks about the scientific benefits of a plant-based diet.
Yes.
Now, I'm saying that to say this. I did an experiment where I spent 6 months to a year as a strict plant-based vegan.
Hmm.
And then I started to incorporate a little bit of protein back, and then I'm finding my balance. But I did notice that while I was on a plant-based diet, I lost a lot of weight, and I
Hmm.
felt really good, and I felt vibrant. So now I understand nutrient density and stuff like that. So when you reached out to me and you talked about it, I know you said you wasn't necessarily vegan. It's different
Yes.
from vegan and plant-based. It's different. But tell me your experiences from a nutrition perspective and how that helped your recovery as far as the nutrition and the plant-based side.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am certified through NASM, National Academy of Sports Medicine, on
Awesome.
nutrition coaching and personal training. And I will say that there is so there is scientific evidence that plant-based diets do help with things like cancer,
Right,
heart disease,
right.
obesity. And it's not just, this isn't just, bro science or, social media science. This is
Correct.
actual,
It's
like,
real stuff.
controlled studies that have, you know, uh, moderate to strong evidence that plant-based really does, at a like molecular level, help individuals combat some of these diseases.
Yeah.
And I would say from my experience, the number one inflaming substance you can put into your body is sugar.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
alcohol is its own, um, element. We're not even going to call it a nutrient, because it's not, it's a toxin. If you are familiar with macronutrients, it's not a carb, it's not a fat, it's not a protein, it's its own
Right.
thing. It has, what, 7 calories per gram. So those beers that say they only have 2 carbs, no, that's
Yeah.
complete BS.
Yeah.
But it breaks down into your system, uh similar to like a complex sugar. So
Right.
it's inflammatory, and you can feel it, especially if you're on a bender. I mean, other than the damage to your liver, you could feel it in your guts. So
Right.
when you remove that, after a while, after the dependency wears off, you start to feel better. And then when you remove, the regular sugars, you feel even better. And then, when we eat meat, and I'm not knocking it, there is its place and people eat it, and I do eat it on occasion, but a lot of it isn't the healthiest, or it's processed, and it causes just as much inflammation. So
Right.
adhering to more plant-based, choosing to do more organic fruits and vegetables.
Right.
There really is, yes, organic is definitely dope. There is scientific evidence,
Right.
not what you read in a magazine by a blogger, or, what you saw on Insta or Facebook by the influencer. There is scientific evidence that plant-based nutrition helps with inflammation, and inflammation causes, your cells um to react negatively, and
Correct.
that's where diseases start, in your cells.
It starts in your cells. And what I love about it, you mentioned the gut, and one of the reasons why, nutrient density is important and having a more plant-based approach to nutrition is important is because your gut microbiome is where a lot of your epigenetics responses happen and your overall health, because
Hmm.
we have just as many neurons, if not more, in our gut than in our brain, right? They have a lot of neural activity there. That's why they say the gut brain and stuff,
Yes.
that's a big thing. Your gut
Yeah.
microbiome, your gut microbiota, this environment is so important. And your gut bacteria is older than any other aspect which makes us. Our bacteria is our most ancient, the most ancient thing in us that dictates our overall health. So
Yeah.
if you have a healthy gut microbiome, then your whole genetic and environment is going to be much better. That's
Absolutely.
why I realized that. And the one now, so I'm bringing home the one thing that your gut bacteria loves to eat is fiber, and you really get that from the plant-based
Yes.
materials, right? The indigestible fiber is the indigestible part of the vegetables and the stuff that your body can't digest, but the gut bacteria digests this fiber. And I notice a big difference, right? So the analogy, which is cool, is it's like if your home was invaded by a bunch of like bad people, like gangbangers and stuff, and they just kicked in the door and they just started partying and just going crazy, your whole environment at the home would change, right? Because of
Hmm.
what you're feeding yourself. So if you're eating Chinese food and pizza all day, the gut bacteria that develops in your stomach is gonna breed more disease, more inflammation, and all of these
Hmm.
things. The more plant-based stuff and healthy foods and water and stuff that you ingest, it creates more positive bacteria, and that bacteria changes your whole environment. So when I went on my plant-based, now that I'm like half and half. I eat, like, I put all of my vegetables, beans, legumes, all of that first, and I make
Hmm.
sure I get as much stuff in first. I could really control the aging process and how I feel and how I look. Now I could control it.
Yes.
And before we didn't even know how to control that, until the telomere. I don't know if you heard of the telomere effect. Have you ever heard of telomeres and stuff? It's incredible science, but I'm not going to turn this into a scientific
No,
podcast.
you can. No, that's
But
awesome.
the,
All these notes, I'm gonna go check them
yeah,
out.
the telomere effect is amazing. Our DNA, right? If you look at it, the end caps of our DNA, it's like if they compare it to shoelaces, right?
Mhm.
The cap at the end of your shoelace will act as a telomere, right?
Okay.
It
Hmm.
prevents your DNA from fraying. So
Hmm.
when they discovered telomeres, they was able to dictate how long you will live based on the length of your telomeres and the health of your telomeres, right?
Oh, wow.
And the telomeres have an enzyme called telomerase that can make your telomere longer. So
Hmm.
that's what created something called the longevity effect. So now what happens is when you change your environment, meaning that you reduce your stress through meditation, better
Hmm.
sleep, and stuff like that, then you change what you're eating, how you're eating, you stop drinking and stuff, you could increase and improve the strength of your telomeres, which makes you actually reverse the aging process. You
Oh,
start
yeah, I
look,
totally believe
yeah,
it.
you look younger, you feel better. Like you look great, you look vibrant. I know you personally feel better. You feel
Yeah.
like you look better since you decided to stop drinking and change your
Yeah.
diet. So that's the science, ladies and gentlemen. Check it out: the telomere effect, the
Yeah.
longevity key, and all of this stuff. I got into all of this because of my recovery,
Sure.
because I
Yeah.
am the way I look. I have a picture from 10 years ago where I look like I was 50 years old.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
talking about, I look like, everything was just crazy. And it
And
was
now you look great.
thank you. And I'm older. So I'm old. I just turned 41, and I could
Happy
compare.
birthday.
Thank you. And I just feel better. So, one, I just wanted to let you know everything you're talking about is right on. And I
Yeah.
think you're bringing a beautiful perspective to the recovery community. And I have to ask you, this discipline, like, running the 5K with the fellow soldiers and, getting out there, the
Mhm.
marathons and all of this stuff, where do you get the discipline from? Is that military related, or was that your dad was a bodybuilder when
Yeah.
he was 14?
Yeah.
So to tell us about your discipline and the importance of discipline.
Yeah, my dad cultivated that discipline in me. He was a competitive bodybuilder in the 1980s. When I picked up rowing my freshman year of high school, he took me to the local gym. He taught me how to use every single piece of equipment in the gym. He taught me the core lifts. He taught me what dedication really is to sport. I continued on in college rowing, despite heavy drinking, got up, every day to practice. We were invited to row internationally my senior year of college and compete over in England. And, it translated to the military. Like, you get up when you're told to get up, you make your bed, you work out, you do the physical conditioning. And it always stuck with me. And even now, it's been years since Dad passed away. I could still kind of hear him in the gym, like counting those sets and reps with me. So
Right.
that's really where it started. And like I said, I um, really fit into the fitness and training space. I think that especially in a world where it's so easy to compare ourselves to what we see on social media platforms. It's hard, even now that I'm going to be 37, mother of two,
Nice.
it can be hard to feel where you fit in or where you belong. And like, through my life and through my struggles and ups and downs, and I always gravitated to not just uh sports, but like outside sports, lifting heavy, like just always kind of gravitated to using fitness and training as a form of meditation. So
Nice. I
that's where my
love
discipline comes from. Yeah.
Wow. So training and lifting as a form of meditation, creating a
Mhm.
focal point, mindfulness, right? That's like
Mhm.
mindful because you have to pay attention.
You have to
You
pay
up to those
attention.
weights. You can't
You
play
have to
safe.
work on your breathing. You
Right.
have to count. You're
Right.
often in nature. I've, especially with pandemic, have taken the weights out in the backyard. So, but
Amazing.
typically, you're still counting, and you're still, even if you're trying to drown it out, and I did for so many years, you can always go back to, I always went back to the training aspect, and I really think it saved me.
It saved you. What? Yeah, same thing here. I mean, oh my God, I just thought about that. The importance of using the mindfulness, the meditation in the fitness process.
Mhm.
You should write a book about that. That's so cool. So, well, I mean, you're doing so much, and I mean, do you tell? So, what do you do for fun to unwind? Because we have to balance it all out. If we just stay on 100 and stuff, we'll go nuts. So, what do you do to unwind and just to really bring it home and to calm down and relax?
Yeah, I love, this might sound stupid, but like, you can find me in a bathtub with some bath bombs reading a good book. I've
Hey,
read one, two, three, four, five, like 50 books,
wow,
in this time space this year. Because right, I had to find something. I can't work out all the time.
correct.
I do have two children, so another hobby is to raise,
Yeah,
contributing members of society.
correct. Correct.
But I've read everything from self-help to biographies to nutrition to everything
Any
in the
book that
bathtub
comes to
with a
mind
bath
that you
bomb.
cool, cool. Any book that comes to mind that you recommend to the community?
So I just read, and I read a couple pieces by Brené Brown, and it's Dare to Lead, and it really is almost the heart of what you're talking about. Like, I think there's a lot of vulnerability in what you do, and opening up and putting your ego aside, and you're in a way, you're like leading this movement for the purpose of not only letting yourself be seen, but also giving people the space to be seen,
Right.
um, it in a topic that actually has a lot of shame around it,
Yeah.
for people in early recovery like myself, but for people who are in denial that we
Yeah.
communicate with every day. So Brene Brown, Dare to Lead is a great book, and I got a lot from it.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much. And you are the creator of the experiment. And what is that? Can you tell us a little bit
So
about
it's very new.
that? Okay.
The experiment is something that I created that gives people a very safe space that are either curious about sobriety or curious about their mindfulness around drinking, or, I can't tell you how many times in my 15-year struggle I would Google, like, what's an alcoholic? Do I have a problem? And I don't want to I don't want to message people and be like, hey, if you think you have a problem, join this 21-day experiment. But it is a very safe space for people who are curious about getting sober to get mindful around what they're putting into their body, how they feel when they're putting certain things into their body, like plant-based, like drinking, how they feel when they get out in nature, what movement feels like, because I think that there is a space where I fit in that can help people see how movement can help, and how taking some time to really see what their healthy and unhealthy habits are and how they feel about them could push them in the direction to stop drinking. I really wish someone 10 years ago would have sat me down and been like, let's just do this experiment. I'm going to sit with you and do it with, walk you through it. I'm going to have this conversation with you where we can talk in confidence and help you see what the choices you're making is doing to your mind and your body and your soul.
I love that so much because it gives people an option. It gives them a time frame. It's safe. And I mean, I remember trying to do this on my own, right? And
Yeah.
it would have been different if I was approached by with some help and someone else. And it would work. I would do so well within the 30 days. I'll be new. I'll exercise. And one bad night, which has set me all the way back.
Yeah.
And one of my biggest missions is to break the stigma of relapse, right? And
Yes.
because so many people either die between rock bottoms, like I call it,
Yeah.
between those rock bottoms or relapse points because of the shame. And I
Yeah.
like to tell people, look, relapse is part of the process. It
Yeah.
doesn't give you an excuse to say, well, relapse is part of the process, so let me go get wasted. And that's not what we're talking about.
No.
What we're talking about is that if it happens, the time frame you sit there feeling terrible, feeling ashamed, and then feeding off of that and continuing until the world tells you have to hit this destination point, this new destination point of rock bottom. I'm like, wait a minute, too many
Yeah.
people are dying now. We don't have the benefit of telling people, oh, wait till you hit rock. No, we have to say, no, it's okay. You relapse. Now let's how to get right back
Yeah.
on
Right.
track. And that was
Absolutely.
my problem, the shame. And a lot of that shame came from people's reaction to my relapse. So breaking the stigma goes both ways, and teaching the people around us how to deal with someone. And look, I'm in recovery, and I'm the host of the Sober is Dope podcast. And sometimes I really struggle in my own family and with my own friends when they struggle. And I'm not afraid to say that, because I get
Mhm.
really uncomfortable around someone now. If they're drunk, I get really uneasy, I get clammy, and I don't have the social skills. They're not perfected yet to just be like, oh, you're having a bad day, and I'm totally understand. It's not that cut and dry. I still get like, oh, how are we gonna fix this? And I have to catch myself. So even me, the guy who's running, I have this podcast. People might think, well, I'm still might give you a hard time, and then I still have to catch myself, and I still have to say, well, let's get a plan. But the goal is to kind of just beat it home and say, look, guys, look, we could fight this. We could get back on track, right?
Yeah.
So that's important. And and just even in your case, being new,
Yeah.
just be patient with yourself, because that's the number one thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone told you this also. It's okay to say no, because it's okay to not be available for everyone. It's okay to be a little selfish if you have to with your own self-care and time.
Yeah.
It's okay to say, I'm not doing nothing this month but laying around and sleeping. If that's what you need, I don't want you to, because sometimes the sober person becomes a superhero and we feel like we got to be strong for everyone when we're still healing,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So please just, put that for anyone out there who's new in early recovery, right? This is for everyone in early recovery, and even people who have 20 years under your belt. If you're in recovery and you got to take a chill pill, right?
Yeah, so that it's so great that you just said that, because I get a lot of like, oh, you can't moderate. You didn't seem like you had a problem. And it's like, no, if I could moderate, I've been trying to for 15 years, I would just do that. I would moderate.
Right.
And I am in early recovery. Um, but I'll tell you, I tried so many times I tried to shove that square peg into that round hole, and I would,
Mm,
like I said, put rules, and I would try to moderate, and I would stop for a while, and every single time I picked up a bottle, it came back with such a vengeance. And I saw something, because everyone's rock bottom is different, and it goes down pretty far
yeah.
before, the point of no return, death. Like, I've been in legal trouble. I've woken up in random houses. I've put myself in very precarious situations. And like, your bottom can go lower and lower and lower each time you say, like, I still have further to go, like, or I don't have further to go, you find it. And so for me, what, like I said, like, yes, fitness really pushed me in the direction, but I also feel like I really put out a blazing kitchen fire before the whole house went up in flames,
I
because
love
I
it.
know
I
I
love
know that I was heading in one direction, and we both know how that ends. So
Yes, and I commend you for that. Thank you so much for your story, for your courage, for sharing. It took me almost 7 years before I even was able to share my story. The Sober is Dope
wow.
podcast is a year and a half old because I wasn't ready until I got to about my 6th year to start telling my story.
That's
So
amazing.
your courage coming out early and talking about this publicly is going to help so many people. And I really, really, really thank you so much. And so can you let everyone know where they could find you and your master training program and your LinckFit program?
Yes, so I'm on Instagram, LinckFit, LINCKFIT _1111, because I do believe in synchronicity. I'm on Facebook, Jenn Linck, and I have a website, www.linckfit.com. So I'm out there. I'm relatively, I have a relatively small reach on social media, but I really am glad for that, because I finally, after years of the fitness, after bodybuilding competitions, aesthetic competitions, everything, like, I finally am understanding, like, why I've been put on this planet.
Right.
Um, and so I'm ready. And I know that there are people who have a very similar story that I do, that I can help, and that's really all I want to do.
And you're gonna do it. I'm telling you, you're a star. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, Jenn is like reading her bio, and when you get the full picture of who we are interviewing, this lady is accomplished. She did more in her 36 years than most people did in their lives. And thank you for serving for our country first and
Thank
foremost.
you.
That means so much to me. And I just love what you're doing. And I think that you're gonna hit it big. I think the whole world needs to hear it. Link up with Rich Roll if you can. He's into marathoning. I know you ever heard of Rich Roll?
Yes.
There you go. See,
Yes.
I think you and Rich hit it off, and finding Ultra and all of that. But
Yes.
before I go, I definitely can't go without talking about 1111 with you. Like when I
Oh,
saw, I said, "Come on." That is so. I mean, I'm going 20 years back with
yeah.
1111. Solora on the book 1111 and the whole movement of synchronicity. I mean, I loved it when I saw it. How
Yeah.
did you come to know about the 1111 and synchronicity?
I am very much a believer that the universe sends us messages.
Right.
And I don't mean to sound woo woo, but I have a very strong belief that the universe speaks to us, God uses the universe to send us messages. There is science and physics behind our number system.
Right.
God is not stupid. He uses them very meticulously.
Right.
1111 is I see it. I'm telling you, I see it sometimes 5 times a day, not just on the clock, but I use a food scale. The food scale says 1111. When I pump gas, it says 1111. Like, I always see it. And I am a firm believer that when you find these messages and when you pay attention to the messages that God is sending you, that you are going in the right direction. And this year in particular, after January 6th, I have seen 1111 every single day.
And that's a confirmation that you're right on track. Another thing the 1111 talks about is the activation points. Is a point of recognition, intention point, activating and setting an intention for what you want in that time. So I'm so excited because I mean, way before it became popular, I actually read the books about it, and I was
Yeah.
going back a long time ago, man. And to see that it travels so far into the future, like before, I used to say 1111, be like, what is this guy talking about? But it was big. It was a big movement of based on the astrology pyramids, the points on the planet, the astrology and everything. So I'm very excited to hear that. Before we go, your podcast, Live with LinckFit.
Yeah, it's live with LinckFit.
Live with LinckFit.
Also very much in its infancy. I am it's not as it's not just sobriety, it's also wellness. It's everything through the lens of modern day America, what we're dealing with.
Right.
We're dealing with a lot of shit, that we don't always talk about, like how are we gonna telework with 2 kids? Like, my kids are still virtual learning.
Right.
Both my husband and I are back to work. All these things we talk about because these things are the things that when we don't talk about, we try to solve on our own, which is almost impossible because we're not meant to do anything alone on this planet. Or 2, turn to sometimes unhealthy coping mechanisms like drugs and alcohol. So I want Live with LinckFit to be a platform that we can talk about all things wellness, how we can live our fullest potential, what are some roadblocks that get us to this potential, and how we can, I'll use a military term, how we can war game our best healthy habits so that we're armed when these situations arise.
I love that so much. I love that so much. Jenn Linck, you are a superstar. Thank you for being part of the Sober is Dope experience. You really blessed us today. I would love to have you on again. You could be like our in-house fitness person.
I love it. Oh, yes. Accepted.
Before I go, without being political, any message you could send to the world, to the country right now, approaching the election with the pandemic? Is there as a military personnel, is there anything you could say to us out there to put people at ease, or at least give us some motivation?
I will use a Brené Brown. People are people are people, and we all have our own opinions, and it is okay to disagree. What it is not okay is to fuel the flames of aggression or conflict with drugs and alcohol. So keep an open mind, have open-minded discussions, agree to disagree, and remember that people are people are people. And the other thing I would say is hurt people hurt people. So really take that time to check yourself and just give yourself grace and extend that grace to others, really, truly.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it from the best, Jenn Linck on the Sober is Dope podcast. That's a wrap for our amazing episode on fitness, sobriety, love, and 1111. I'm POP Buchanan, your host. I love you all, and we will catch you on the other side. Thank you.